is a preseason game, and I know it wasn't announced that Caitlin Clark wouldn't play until right before. This is a preseason game where Clark is not available, and yet...
Did you witness the Mystics' attempt to intimidate the Fever without Caitlin Clark on the court when rookie Kiki slammed Sophie Cunningham to the ground? Sophie wasn't having it and immediately stood up, stared the rookie in the eyes, and yelled, "You don't do that." The Mystics player grinned, but Sophie was enraged by the incident and replied by scoring 21 points against them as the Fever dealt them a humiliating defeat.
But Sophie Cunningham has been an absolute beast in this game. 34 minutes, 6 of 11 from the field, 54%, 21 points.
However, the drama didn't end with a final whistle. The tension continued to build long after the final buzzer, and what happened next will truly shock you. But before we get to that, let's go back to the moment that set off the fireworks because Kiki's actions were completely inappropriate. She flatly shoved Sophie Cunningham to the ground. Can you believe that a rookie, yes, a rookie, would push a seasoned veteran like that in a preseason game?
But in the middle of the game, Sophie Cunningham, oh, spicy old Sophie Cunningham, she gets in a tussle over a rebound with Kiki Iriafen, the rookie from USC, who is now...
There was no basketball action, just intimidation tactics from a player who hadn't yet merited a spot in the league.
And she is not having any of it. And she basically gives her welcome to the league talk, saying, "You don't bleeping do that. You don't bleeping do that." Oh.
Sophie's response turned into the pivotal moment when she jumped up right away, didn't hesitate for a second, and faced Kiki directly. Her clear words, "You heard on the broadcast you don't do that," reverberated throughout the court, setting a boundary that needed to be established. It was the spark that changed the game's entire energy.
Right there, you can see Sophie telling her after that flagrant, "You don't mother effing do that. You don't mother effing do that."
Imagine pushing a revered veteran to the hardwood and then sneering about it. Kiki's reaction made it worse by grinning after the push, which betrayed her actual motivations. Flagrant disregard for a well-known player.
And that's Kiki Iriafen, and I gotta tell you, here we go with the smiling like you've done. I don't get it. This is the worst part of the WNBA. It is. A ton of reaction. The smiles afterward, let's get negative.
Dana Bonner acted quickly to confront Brittany Sykes about their rookie behavior, making it clear that such disrespect would not be tolerated against her teammate. The confrontation demonstrated how cohesive the Fever team had become, standing together against needless aggression. Meanwhile, the Mystics bench displayed a smugness throughout the incident, as if they believed they could intimidate the Fever with Caitlin Clark out of the court. Their body language screamed that they saw this as their chance to send a message to a team they thought was vulnerable.
It's crazy. Look at this comment. "She's not fazed one bit by that spray tan MAGA bitch." Here we go. Need Kiki to whack her again. Guys, it's where we're at. I mean, what are we doing?
After the Mystics' foul conduct and disrespect for basketball etiquette were denounced by fans on social media, comments about how this behavior had no place in the game, especially from a rookie with no credentials to challenge more seasoned players, flooded in.
And the retards, as I like to call them, the RAHTARDS's, they are already now attacking Sophie Cunningham. Oh, they're mad. The MAGA Barbies got them angry. They're cheering on violence against this basketball player.
This wasn't difficult basketball. Rather, it was a rookie attempting to garner attention by being disrespectful. Sophia's prompt action showed why she is respected throughout the league. She stood her ground and made sure Kiki knew she had broken the unspoken code among pros. The tone for everything that came next was established by this confrontation. That shove didn't weaken Sophie. Rather, it strengthened her resolve to hold the Mystics accountable where it counts most on the scoreboard. Sophie wasn't just going to talk. She was going to show them exactly who they were opposing.
But we're right back where we were last year, folks. The season just started, and I mean, I guess we're going to have wars again. I mean, seriously, this league it's really crazy.
The Indiana Fever didn't get off to a winning start, so let's get started.
Because let me tell you, the Fever were kicking off the dust in the first quarter, giving everybody a lot of grace here. There was a lot of missed layups. There was a lot of bricking, and the defense wasn't really that great.
Yes, that's correct. Without Caitlin Clark, the Fever appeared completely lost. They were behind 24-13, and their defense was crumbling. It was like watching a different team than what we've been seeing lately, with the Mystics running all over them. To be honest, it seemed like this game would end before it had even begun.
But listen, the Mystics had a ton of picks. In the WNBA draft, they got a lot of high picks. They got Kiki Iriafen, they got Sonia Citron. She started today, Sonia Citron, and Sonia Citron looked good. And honestly, Brittany Sykes looked really great too.
When the Mystics learned that Clark wasn't playing, they thought they had this game won and were practically celebrating before tip-off, as if they'd been given a free win because the rookie sensation was sidelined. They also had Sutton in there, Kiki, who we already know isn't afraid to get physical, and Brittany Sykes, who is always a problem for opposing teams. You could see it in their faces.
They started out with Sid Colson running the point, and that really wasn't working out. I mean, Steph White was like, she kept putting Sid in too. And at a certain point in like the third quarter, I was wondering, like, is she going to try out any of the rookies? Because Sid was definitely not making a difference pretty much whatsoever to the Indiana Fever.
Sydney Colson started for the Fever, but nothing was clicking at all. The offense appeared to be stagnant, the passes were sloppy, and nobody seemed to know where they were supposed to be. It was like watching a train roll around aimlessly without a conductor. The Fever appeared to be hopelessly disorganized, but then something shifted, and the Mystics took full advantage, jumping passing lanes, getting easy buckets in transition, and building their lead.
To the wayside. Enter Sophie Cunningham. She was the lead scorer of the entire game for both teams, coming away with 21 points and 8 rebounds. And I gotta say, it is so evident when Caitlin Clark is not on the court for the Indiana Fever. She is such a floor general. She is the X factor for the Indiana Fever. She like leads the way when they don't have her. I've said this before, but the Indiana Fever look like a train without a conductor.
After that earlier push, Sophie Cunningham's jaw was set, her shoulders squared like a boxer entering the ring with something to prove the energy of the entire team, and the arena, which had become quiet with resignation, suddenly hummed with new energy. You could see it in her eyes, a burning intensity. The moment she checked in, the entire team changed. This was about sending a message that you don't disrespect the Indian Fever and get away with it.
But let's go back to Sophie Cunningham for a second. She went 6 for 11 from the field, and her three-point percentage was 33%. That is pretty darn good for someone who has never played with other teammates, and for someone's first time suiting up in an Indiana Fever jersey. Bonner looks like she's moving the ball to Sophie, kicks it to Kelsey, who kicks it back out to Sophie for the jumper.
Sophie is a dog who simply goes by coach. Stephanie White would later write, capturing perfectly what the team needed. Without Clark, that toughness, that grit, that refusal to back down like a phoenix rising from the ashes of that disastrous first quarter, Sophie's fierce competitiveness sparked life into a team that seemed defeated. White observed that Sophie elevates the play of those around her, and the effect ripples across the lineup in real time. Take a listen.
Oh my God, Sophie's a dog. She just is, she's a competitor. She's versatile, so she allows us to do different things. Like, she plays with such toughness. She's huge, and she's going to be for us all season long. But what she brings from an energy standpoint, she raises the level of play of everybody around her as soon as she steps foot on the floor. Hell, even on the sideline. I mean, her communication, everything. She's definitely an X factor.
Sophie changed from being a role player to a game changer, dominating the game with 21 points and 8 rebounds, going 6 for 1 from the field, and finishing 33% from three-point range. She wasn't content with jump shots. Instead, she attacked the rim, drawing contact and finishing through defenders when the Fever needed clutch shots. She also worked hard on defense. The stats only partially revealed the story, as each basket seemed to boost the Mystics' confidence while giving her teammates any.
It took one game to convince me Sophie's legit, a good fit for the Fever.
After struggling through a scoreless first quarter, Kelsey Mitchell started to capitalize on Sophie's energy. She found her rhythm, placing the ball in advantageous positions and making clutch plays at critical times. The Mitchell-Cunningham connection served as the catalyst that propelled the Fever back into contention, giving the Mystics more than they had anticipated.
Kelsey Mitchell was also sort of getting acclimated again, but she did have the ball in her hands a lot. And she was She didn't score anything in the first quarter, and she shot a lot.
The Mystics had no response to Sophie Cunningham's fire knocking her down, which only made her more determined. They had come expecting to bully a team without Clark, but instead they ran into a player who was playing like she had a score to settle and a victory to win. Sophie didn't just play well. She changed the game, turning a likely blowout into an overtime victory through sheer willpower. The crowd was silent without Clark, but Sophie's every shot showed that the Fever had depth. Clark may be the face of the franchise, but Sophie demonstrated that they have grit, and the Mystics left knowing that Indiana isn't a one-dimensional team, but the story is far from over. The Mystics players didn't even have the grace to follow the standard handshake line after Sophie Cunningham humiliated them by dropping 21 points and guiding the Fever to victory. They simply left the game as if they couldn't accept their defeat.
I didn't know this, but the Mystics refused to shake the hands of the Fever players after the game.
When intimidation tactics failed, the Mystics tried to push Sophie to the ground in an attempt to intimidate the Fever, but when that failed, they were unable to face them after the game. What kind of message does it send that when you can't win by intimidation, you refuse to acknowledge the other team? This is honestly one of the most disrespectful displays in WNBA history. This was fundamentally poor sportsmanship.
Tell you, this league is just ate up with class. That's unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. The classless players and acts across this league is wild.
When you consider who controls the Mystics, the relationship to ownership becomes evident. Johnson, Sheila, her attitude has spread like water downhill, permeating every level with the same negativity. The players' actions aren't random. Rather, they reflect a culture that was established at the top, and the disrespect shown during and after the game is a result of this organizational DNA.
Well, it shouldn't be a surprise that we saw what we saw during the Mystics Fever game from the team that's owned by Sheila Johnson herself. Of course, Mrs. Why Not Put the entire WNBA on the cover of Time magazine since Caitlin Clark got Athlete of the Year during a very race-driven, let's just keep it real, hatefully race-driven CNN interview not that long ago, just a few months ago, that happened.
The seeds were sown even before the game began, when Caitlin Clark won Time Person of the Year. Johnson openly criticized Clark, displaying blatant bias against the Fever star. This created a hostile atmosphere towards the Fever from the beginning. Johnson's remarks set the tone, and her players followed suit on the court.
And so last night, we read Time magazine where Caitlin Clark was named Athlete of the Year. Why couldn't they have put the whole WNBA on that cover and said, the WNBA is the league of the year because of all the talent that we have?
Johnson has been repeatedly criticized for making controversial remarks and creating this hostile environment. In effect, she has infected her organization with negativity. How can players show respect when the leadership sets the opposite example? In organizations, attitudes are ingrained from the top down, and the Mystics' behavior is a direct reflection of the leadership's attitude.
Because when you just keep singling out one player, it creates hard feelings. And so now you're starting to hear stories of racism within the WNBA, and I don't want to hear that.
This is what happens when hatred runs an organization. One particularly popular post compared the Mystics to a team playing with their owners' personal grudges as playbooks. The public realized this wasn't isolated behavior, but rather systematic behavior coming from the top. The online response was swift and united, and basketball fans from all platforms connected the dots between ownership attitude and player behavior.
Happen. And then, of course, we see the tactics that spill on.
The disparity is startling. Which team best represents basketball's true spirit? Sophie Cunningham and the Fever showed tenacity and professionalism in the face of physical bullying. They responded by playing better basketball and winning fairly, while the Mystics only showed pettiness, pushing players to refuse handshakes and leaving like sore losers. This incident revealed a worrying trend in the WNBA, where some teams prioritize personal vendettas over sportsmanship. We're seeing divisions unrelated to healthy competition and completely rooted in negativity. Is this the WNBA's desired image? Teams refusing basic sportsmanship and turning to physical intimidation? Or should it highlight exceptional basketball talent like Cunningham displayed?
They've taken on the persona of their owner. Let's just keep it real. Kind of thought that might happen. Dirty, classless, no professionalism, bad look.
The Mystics thought that without Caitlin Clark, they could intimidate the Fever into submission, but instead they played dirty and sacrificed both the game and their reputation. The Mystics need to reevaluate their organizational culture because this behavior harms not only their team but also the integrity of the league. Fans properly expect better, and the WNBA deserves teams dedicated to the sport's best ideals rather than its lowest impulses. Basketball should celebrate competition, respect, and sportsmanship, all of which were lacking from the Mystics' performance when they pushed Lost and couldn't shake hands.
It's one thing to be physical. It's another thing to be slinging people on the floor, basketball court, and all this kind of stuff. And that's where it starts taking a turn.
Sophie Cunningham gave the Mystics exactly what they deserved, 21 points of pure payback. Her reaction after being pushed, which was captured on the scoreboard, spoke volumes. Coach White called her a dog and a competitor who elevates the play of everyone around her. She delivered exactly that. The Mystics attempted to bully her, but they left with nothing but a loss and a reputation as the league's least sportsmanlike team. Meanwhile, the resilient Fever demonstrated what true competitive spirit looks like. Will this underdog team continue to rise above the negativity? This game brought attention to the WNBA's increasing issue of unsportsmanlike behavior, which supporters worldwide are denouncing.